Here we go. So we hope that this could also be a useful session for those who might not be able to join us today for other priorities and other commitment. So welcome everyone. This is a webinar organized by the Area-Based Approach Working Group, which is a working group active under the Global CCCM cluster. And it's a webinar that is organized in the framework of the Humanitarian Networks and Partnership Week. So I know some of you, I can see some familiar names, but it's also nice that we have some participants that might not have been exposed to the work of the ABA working group, and they can get to know us, and we can also get to know them and their experience. So we're really, really happy to have a diverse audience today, and to also learn from your experience and exchange idea on the topic of today's webinar, which is the area-based approach site management framework in practice. So we will hear from field practitioners on how they have been concretely applying the area-based site management framework that is set in a crucial document for us, which is the CCCM cluster paper approach on area-based approach. So a document that outlines the position of the CCM global cluster on area-based approaches. So with no further ado, I would ask you to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us your name, where are you joining us from today, and also if you wish to tell us a little bit how you feel. Do you feel more like a quokka, which is the happiest animal in the world? You can see it all smiling, or you feel more like a vizcacha, which is a little bit on the sad spectrum of the animal behavior, I would say. Just to give you a little bit more information, the quokka is a kind of marsupial, actually technically a macropod, whatever this means. It's a macropod. It's the size of a domestic cat, and it lives, so this species lives in southwestern Australia, and as you can see, it's kind of a Instagram star. You might have seen it in your social media feed because it's always smiling, and when you take picture of the quokka, it always looks like they are smiling. And on the contrary, on the other side of the screen, we have the vizcacha, which is a rodent that lives in South America, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Peru, and is, as I said, the opposite side of the happiness spectrum compared to a quokka, because it has this kind of expression that makes him look like sad, you know. Then I found this picture that is really like, please don't, it's like not the day today. So if you like, tell us also how you're feeling today. We know has been kind of a interesting couple of months and a half for us in the sector. So we understand if you feel more like a vizcacha, that's okay. But if you feel like a quokka, as I can see people sharing, that's also great. And we're really, really happy. Me personally, I feel like a quokka. I'm happy. We organized this with Isabel and all our speakers. So I'm really excited because I think it's going to be a great discussion. As you tell us, if you feel more like a quokka or a vizcacha, and also introduce yourself, it's our turn to introduce ourselves. I'm Elena, I'm a CCM officer with IOM, and I co-lead the area-based approach working group of the CCM Global Cluster, together with my colleague Isabel, that is going to facilitate the webinar with me today. Isabel is the Global Site Management Specialist with NRC. And you can see her here with me today. Isabel, do you want to say hi?
Everyone, thanks for joining. I also feel more like a quokka, and I'm very happy to be here with you all.
Great, a lot of quokka I can see also in the chat. You can find here some QR code that will direct you to our working group webpage. We will also share the link in the chat at the end of the webinar. The second QR code is to a list of resources that you can find on our webpage, on the Global Cluster website, the CCCM Global Cluster website, that provides you with a list of useful resources that are relevant for area-based approaches and specifically area-based approaches through area-based approach site management. So you have all different kind of activities, resources like videos, like PowerPoint presentation, like case studies, and so on and so forth. And we'll also share the link in the chat. So as I said, we really want to focus on the practical side of the area-based approaches site management framework. So how can we actually put this framework into practice? And we will focus on two main modalities of implementation of the framework. We will be joined by Bharat Adhikari, who is the CCCM Ethiopia Cluster Coordinator for IOM, and also our colleague Irga Gebreitsaber. I'm sorry, I'll ask him to pronounce his name correctly later on, from OSSHD, who is the subnational cluster coordinator for Tigray and also the program manager for CCCM. And with them, we will talk about community center as a modality to implement activities, site management activities, and thus apply the area-based approaches framework and all the three components, the participatory aspect, geographical aspect, and also the multi-sectorial aspect. And then we will also hear from Marco Rotunno, who is the Protection from Violence project manager for NRC in South Ukraine. He will be talk about his experience with mobile teams in Ukraine. So another modality to apply the area-based approaches site management framework. On the same modality, so on mobile team, we will also hear from Mohammed Al-Swadi, who is the area-based coordinator for the west coast of Taiz in Yemen for the organization Generations Without Cat. So he will also talk about his experience with mobile teams in Yemen, and we will be able to compare Marco's and Mohammed's experience using a similar modality, but in two very different contexts. And we will start with a presentation from our panelists that will talk a bit more in depth about their context and also their specific modality of implementation of the area-based approaches site management framework. So we will first hear from Bharat and Irga, and then from Marco and Mohammed. And then we want to go into a mini panel discussion using breakout room. So if you wish, you can already submit your question during the webinar using this QR code that I have it here. It's on survey modality, so you can submit your question for Irga and Bharat related to the community center, and for Marco and Mohammed related to the implementation of mobile teams. If you are not able to scan the QR code, you can go to www.menti.com and insert this code you can see on the screen, 81009535. I will also put this information in the chat, so as we go into the first part of the webinar, you can easily keep on submitting a question for our breakout room and panel discussion in the second part of the webinar. And now I hand over to Isabel.
Everyone, thanks, Eleanor. So what we thought we'd do at the beginning of this session, for anyone who is either newer to site management and CCCM or has worked less in area-based approaches, is give you a short overview We are slightly worried about time, so we're not going to show this specific video, but we would like you all to be aware of it. It's an incredibly useful overview of area-based site management. It's a little bit of an explainer video available in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic, accessible via the QR code. And again, we can share this link again in the chat towards the end of the session. But what I will do is take you through the site management framework. Do I have access to change the slides, Eleanor? Maybe. So I'm sure this diagram, for many of you who work in area-based site management or non-site management, it could be within the shelter cluster or others, may well be familiar with this diagram. Similarly to others, we work through a multi-sectorial approach, working with everyone available in the area to make sure that the project participants have access to a multi-sectorial service delivery. We work through a participatory methodology, often working with multiple stakeholders, including local coordination forum and community committees and community governance structures as well. Where those pre-exist and are already in place, we work with them to strengthen and increase participation. Where they are missing and a useful component to add in, we work to create those with other structures already in place, making sure they're appropriate for the local community. They're also geographically targeted, which is more than looking at just one specific site. We're looking at an area, and this could be defined by the local administrative boundary. It could be defined by the community that's there and how they identify themselves as a settlement or an area that they would like to work with. But it's a specifically identified space. We will also be working with displacement affected communities. This goes beyond just those who've been immediately displaced and can include the host community as well, looking at the overall environment within the area we're looking at and how we improve that for the best of all people present. So there are two kind of ways we look at where within the area-based site management framework. Two different options you have on the left-hand side of the screen. The first diagram is a high-density urban area with high concentrations of displaced communities. These are maybe the more traditional thought process when we think about area-based approaches. It's where you have people maybe living out of sites, maybe living within host community families or in kind of collective sites, in maybe a little bit more of a mixed modality of how people choose to live when they resettle into or they move to an urban area. The second one on the right is looking at dispersed rural areas with numerous smaller sites within an administrative boundary. So less often considered to be an area-based approach, but very much included within the site management framework. Looking at potentially a collection of sites across a rural area that are close enough together to receive similar services. I'm going to move on. We're not doing the case studies here. We're doing different ones. So what do we do and how do we do it? The what leads into communications with communities, making sure we hear from them on what they need, and we also provide information on what the response can provide and what services are available. We will also be looking to support coordination, both what pre-exists within the local community, where that's local authorities. We will work very closely with them to build their capacity to support the response, and where we need to do a little bit more at a closer level, working then with the communities to make sure they have access to humanitarian and also local coordination structures. We also work very closely through community engagement, trying to ensure that where possible, as much of the community has their opportunity to provide their voice and engage in the response as much as possible, often through community governance structures, but also through different types of projects that the teams can run, which I hope we will hear a little bit more about through the presentations. And then for these presentations, maybe to help describe how we've divided them out, there's the how we do this. We work often through community resource centres, which we'll see in the following presentations. These are centres maybe at the midpoint of an area-based response where communities can gather, they can be local resources, and they act as a focal point for support and information. We also work through strong community structures making sure that these can then provide that information in areas where we might potentially struggle. We also look at the, sorry, one slide forward if possible. There we go, mobile teams, which we'll also look at within this one. So enabling people to, or our teams, to move around and access those areas in a slightly more mobile way, rather than a static traditional camp management function. So we will look at both of those. Well, community resource centres and mobile teams will be the main focus of these presentations, and give you space if you want to ask more questions in the Mentimeter on how these teams have done it, what their best practices were, and where they've found challenges. So if you think of anything throughout any of the presentations, please feel free to drop it in the Mentimeter. Next slide. Great. So the final component we have is coordination in area-based site management. Obviously, this is an interesting subject at the moment, but primarily site management has often worked at the subnational level. Site management coordination is often intra-site. So traditionally, it's looked at those classic site or camp examples. Within area-based coordination, that shifts a little bit to look at a whole area. So it'll be a small area within the subnational area that they can then provide support and understand the context within, make sure the service providers have access to the information for that area as a whole, rather than necessarily site by site. And I think most of us are probably familiar with the current humanitarian emergency relief system, so I'm not going to go too far into that one. I'll leave that one for now. Great, so I'm going to hand over to our colleagues from Ethiopia, Bharat and Diego, if you'd like to go ahead with your presentation.
Great, thank you, Isabel. Good afternoon, all. It's 1:18 p.m. here in Ethiopia. I'm feeling so happy today to be part of this discussion and part of this webinar as a co-host. So my name is Bharat Adhikari. I work as a cluster coordinator in Ethiopia for CCCM. I'm here with IRGA. I will go briefly how the cluster is working with the partners, and then IRGA will go for the operational side, how community centers are basically working in Ethiopia. So majority of the IDPs are staying in Ethiopia in the host community locations, and there are different dynamics. One, the communities are staying in the host communities locations have been like a more or less deprived of the humanitarian assistance, which has caused a lot of tension in between the host communities and IDP sites. They are excluded from the humanitarian assistance, and the trend has come in such a way because of our limitation in resources that the concentration of humanitarian assistance is more focused in the sites rather than in the host communities. And then the IDPs have been moved involuntarily, majority of the locations where they are staying in the host communities over the rent payment issues and not sharing the resources from received from the humanitarian community, but in fact they both were deprived to get the assistance from humanitarian community on one hand, and on the other hand they are also deprived the host community support. So and the other one is humanitarian assistance has been a pull factor when we focus on site management approach only. And therefore, that was the necessity that we realized that ABA should be part of it. And we are focusing now mainly to respond in CCCM sector in Ethiopia through area-based approach. So how it is doing now in from the cluster's perspective, like we have 17 catchment areas, and our ambition is to scale up to 44 locations in 2025. We hope we will get the situation better in coming months. And then CCCM is also doing the capacity building of his stakeholders. As an example, in the background, this was the picture that we organized recently the training for CCCM focal points in area-based approach of 14 locations, along with their government counterpart, and we took them in one of the community center to share the experience, to observe how the community centers are working, so that they will be able to learn from each other's their observation and coordination among each other. We also created a forum of WhatsApp group among the catchment area focal persons, so they will be sharing the lessons learned, and they will also be sharing the challenges where the CCCM cluster and operation team would be required to address the needs. So this is how we are working, and we also did the standalone CCCM AVA training for the regional authorities and head of the agencies, particularly with the focus on AVA module. And the next step is to engage the other clusters and government authorities and donors simultaneously. So this is how the area-based approach coordination model look like in Ethiopia for now. As an example, you can see there are different agencies. I'm giving an example of 2 agencies working in the different catchment area, and on top of that, area-based approach coordination focal point will be coordinating with the each area-based focal point. And in the meantime, we will also call need-based other cluster partners who are working in that area if the catchment area focal persons are unable to coordinate and address the needs of each catchment area. We came up with this idea because administratively, Ethiopia falls in different level, and zonal level coordination mainly is led by OCHA. So we want to avoid the duplication, but in the meantime, we want to be complementary in the area-based approach coordination mechanism. Yeah. So this is an example of how catchment area is defined. You can see the population density staying in the host communities, and how the CCCM prioritized as the highest caseload of the IDPs is staying in the host communities should be priority. And it is an example of geographical locations that was developed in 2023. And unfortunately, we have a very limited IM capacity now, but in the next few months, we will have this level of map of every catchment area. So yeah, I'm in coordination with the cluster, how the operation team is working on the ground. I will pass to Irga to elaborate more. Cluster supports the operational partner in terms of developing the mechanism, but in the meantime, operational partners also coordinate with the cluster how the community participation is ensured, and multi-sectoral response is also provided for the whole population. Over to you, Irga.
Irga, are you still online? If so, you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah. Thank you, Bharat. Thank you for you give the general overview why we are in need of ABA compared to where we were in humanitarian response. The same is true as a local partner when we involve in camp management and the camp coordination activity under the cluster. It didn't took us to realize that there are IDPs who are not benefiting from the humanitarian response because of where they are living. And in fact, more than 70% of the IDPs are living in the host community in the area that we are living. But for many years, including the CM cluster and other clusters, their mindset of humanitarian response was responding to the need of the IDPs in the site or collective site. So majority of the IDPs were not able to access any kind of service provided by the humanitarian actors. At the same time, the responsibility was shouldered on the community because the community hosted them. And we saw the community was trying to support IDPs within the host community hosted by the people. So because we realized that, we start advocating for inclusiveness of IDPs in the host community into humanitarian response through the CM cluster. And the cluster was the first to recognize there are people who are not benefiting from the humanitarian response. Then currently now in Tigray, we have 11 ABA sites managed by OSAD, supported by UNHCR, and 3 ABA sites supported by the RRF IAM, and there are other ABA sites managed by IAM in Tigray. So our responsibility was 2 basic things. One is advocacy, but second, facilitating for the IDPs in the host community to have their own structure to voice their need because they were not in that position. Only IDP on site had the chance to organize themselves and become strong in voicing their need. But IDPs in the host community had no any structure. They were not organized so that they were not heard. So through the ABA, we create an opportunity for IDPs in the host community to be organized and create their own structure of governance to look every opportunity, including to voice their concern. That's the big achievement that we are registering. Now, in the IDP sites, in the ABA sites that we are managing, IDPs at different age, including women and people with disability, they are well organized. They are their own leadership. They have their own governance. And there is a platform to meet the humanitarian actors to discuss face-to-face on their concern. So this is a big achievement. But when we start this, the big challenge was the mindset of humanitarian actors. The mindset of humanitarian actors and their project activity was only limited on site only. Whatever distribution they had, whatever service they provide, their focus was on site or site-like settlement. But the moment we start a platform for discussion between the IDP governance and humanitarian actors through the cluster, they become able to understand the need and they start providing service. For example, IAM mobile health. Immediately they accept and they start working on the ABA through scheduled structure, providing health services for IDPs in the host community. Second, protection partners like UNHCR through IHS. Imagine one day, they start responding, coming to the community center and providing services for the IDPs with the host community. Then it becomes visible. The structure becomes functional IDPs in the host community become so active to voice their concern, to complain about their need. And through the coordination, partners, they start listening to their concern and start responding to the need. Even it's limited, but compared to 2 years ago, now a number of partners are coming to the community center in a scheduled manner to provide services. In the
Thanks a
photo,
lot.
if you see,
Hirka, thanks a lot. I'll stop you here because I think there will be time to go a bit more in depth into this during the breakout discussion later. I want to give the chance now
Thank
to
you. Thank you.
to Mohammed to talk about Yemen. But everything was very interesting, and I want to draw attention on this nice picture that also show the activities that Irga just talked to us about that are happening in this community center in Ethiopia. Thanks a lot. So we'll go back to this point later, and we'll have time to discuss this more in depth during the breakout session on community centers. And including the challenges that Hirga just explained to us. I want to now give the chance to Mohammed.
Hi, Elena. Thank you so much for this opportunity. This is Mohammed Al-Aswadi from Generation Talqat in Yemen. I'm the area-based approach coordinator in Taiz West Coast. So I will start with my first slide in this workshop, displacement contacts in Yemen. Yet 10 years of conflict combined with the recurring natural disasters such as flooding and strong winds have independent economy hardship, further worsening and the displacement crisis. 33% about 4.8 million of displacement population reside in 2,273 IDP sites, primarily in formal settlement places and significant strength on humanitarian assist. Many IDPs under harsh and living conditions, often sheltering and makeshift structures with minimal support. The Mokhati CCCM area situated on the western coast of Taiz Governorate compares for districts Mocha, Moza, Dubab, and Dal Al-Wazi'iyah with total 40 IDP sites. Some of those sites are difficult to access with immense humanitarian needs. Living conditions in this region are extremely challenges, with most people rise in makeshift and shelter and facing several housing, land, and probably HLB risks. Can we move to the next slide, please, Elena? Yes. Yeah. The management framework in Al Mocha area, given the nature of and the topography of the area, CCCM steps in comparison of 2 steps: mobile approach, roofing team to accessible area twice a week, and light approach, roofing team to inaccessible areas twice a month. These structures bring initial site management, financial, where permanent CCCM present in is not feasible. We have HLB issues, community unacceptable to displaced people, and generic graph condition for all communities make the team responsibility more pros and expanded and include HC and the IDP sites. In this point, the HLB issues, especially in the West Coast and the Maha, these challenges has been going since 2019 in West Coast, especially in the Maha district. And most of these housing sites in Al-Makha are still under infection threat due to the land issues, and the land are perfect. There have been meeting and advocacy effort through our area-based approach monthly meeting with the local authority. Also, UNOCHA CCCM cluster protection had meetings with the local authority to find alternative land for relocating the families, and we are still searching for the solution to this challenge. And this challenge is still ongoing until this day with us. And this challenge make us cannot implement sustainable and activities to the IDBs like transitional shelter, and some IDBs need a durable solution like water. We cannot link them with the water pipeline to the IDB sites due to these challenges. We are still discussing with the local authority in Al-Makha and West Coast to get any solving to this issue. So number 3, area-based approach coordination in Al-Makha is more structures and linking to the exciting district structure, engage with the local authority, community leaders, and humanitarian organization. Coordination structures involves. Can we go to the 3 slides, please? Yes. Effectiveness, effectiveness area-based approach, strongest local engagement, leverage exciting governor and district structures, organize community IDBs, hosting sites, local leaders, authorities, establish communities for discussion, making, assessment, planning, and monitoring, governance and capacity building, monthly coordination, ensure strengthened response to the assess delivery, support local authority, area-based approach structures shared by local authority with the technical and logistical support from CCCM, coordination and long-term sustainability, improve response to sudden on-site needs, example, emergency plan, engage the area-based approach structure in the process of community-led project for resilience and sustainability, promote durable solution for lasting impact, ensure inclusive and coexistence, foster community-driven resilience. See the context in the west coast of Taz. Elena, over to you.
I'm going to jump in. Thank you so much, Mohammed. During the question session and the discussion session, we will have a look a little bit more at the different modalities that are used in the ABA mobile response teams. But again, in the interest of time, I'm going to hand straight over to Marco from Ukraine, to understand a little bit more about the context there. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, Elena, for the invitation. Can you hear me well? I hope. Okay. Hello, I'm Marco from NRC. I'm today in Mykolaiv in a basement because there were 3 alarms in the last 24 hours. So the best was like just go to the basement and take the session from there, so you don't need to move with this new alarm. Just to explain a bit how is the context during the war in general, but also these days. So first of all, I wanted to explain a bit how the displacement and site management is working in Ukraine. This is the latest map of the density of the collective sites that are all over Ukraine. For those who have never been in Ukraine, just to understand, from Kharkiv, which you will see in the very east, to Zakarpattia, which is in the very west, a train can last 24 hours, so it's a very, very big territory. In this territory, there are people in collective sites all over, basically. You will see more red dots in the west, of course, but you can also see that they are everywhere. So we have like thousands of collective sites. The latest figures are around 1,400 collective sites, and the population is quite, per site is quite low. So comparing to other big displacement camps, it's quite different. So it's an average of 50 people per collective site. So we're talking about scattered facilities that are usually dormitories, gyms, university or school dormitories, where people stay, and not so many people, not only in the cities, but very, very remotely in some areas in the countryside. So very difficult to reach frequently such collective sites. Another very important point to flag here is that the sites are usually in charge. I mean, there are usually people in charge of these sites that were originally having different functions, because they were either school principals or dormitory guardmen or dormitory kind of administrators. So not so in charge of the facility, but not used to displaced people. Yeah. So usually it's about responsible for the building itself, not about people. So that was the context where all the CCCM actors had to decide how to operate better. So in this case, in Ukraine, I guess the context drove the choice to adopt this approach, which is basically the area-based approach. So we don't do direct site management, but we support the site management. So we call the modality site management support, because there is someone in place already. But we have mobile teams. So the mobile teams are, of course, geographically divided. Then depends on the capacity of each team, how many regions or how many collective sites and areas in the region the team can cover. In terms of activities, then it's quite different than directly managing a collective site. There is a lot of not just support in terms of procurement of communal items for the people, but also a lot on managing and helping the management to manage the collective sites. So a very big part of the activity is the capacity building and mentoring of the site managers, and a lot is done on the governance. So what you will see in these pictures, it's either capacity building that is done for IDP leaders in the collective sites and site managers, but also a lot has been done towards the governance. So we helped IDP leaders in holding elections for site committees, again, together with the site managers. So as you can understand, because the number of people in one site is very, very small, so there is a very, very strong, interaction between the manager or the management team and the people, because they basically live in the same place together, like daily. So a lot is done towards that. So also in terms of capacity building, a lot on conflict management, stress management, etc., both for the IDP leaders and for the site managers. Other activities that we focused on, here you can see a picture, is a community-led project. So once the committees were established, or if they were already existing, all together to come up with projects that could be beneficial. Better if they could be beneficial not only for the IDPs, because in many cases, either people sleep in the same dormitory as the students, or people live in a village where there are people affected by war, not necessarily displaced, but they're still affected at the same in the same way. So this is a space that was in a basement of a university dormitory where there are IDPs. So the committee established decided to do the gym project, as you can see, the before and the after picture. In this case, the gym has been used since it was established by both, so by the IDPs who stay there and by the students. So it was a joint activity. So at the end, it was something beneficial for both. Another very simple example was the libraries in some dormitories that were used by the people of the community, but also the IDPs. Another thing to highlight now, maybe a last thing, is the very strong coordination. So given that there was already management in place and local authorities, very localized, there is a very localized system in Ukraine where basically every village or every area has someone responsible for the displacement. So basically we adapted our structure for the interaction with this focal point or focal points for the displaced people. So they were always we were always coordinating with them in every step of our activities, because we had an interlocutor, so very easy to communicate with them. Then there are some networks, some IDP councils in some cases where we are trying to link the site committees or the site leaders with. So the councils are maybe in some big cities or in a province which is bigger than a village. So we try to do this link. So just to summarize, the context gave us the possibility to pilot and develop this approach, which was basically a transition to the authorities and to the people who are living in the host community, who are hosting the IDPs, for the handover that is happening from the beginning. So to have like all the actors together from the beginning, because then when the humanitarian action is over, they will stay. So they have been part, or like, I mean, the goal for us was like to make them part of the process from the beginning. So very strong focus on governance and on sustainability, right? So social cohesion, if they stay long, now it's 3 years since the beginning of the war, and many people are living in the same collective site. So it's a lot on social cohesion and then finding durable solutions. I think, I mean, I try to summarize. So yeah, maybe we'll chat more in the group chats. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marco. Okay. So as we got an idea of the displacement context and the type of response that our speakers are adopting in Ethiopia when it comes to community-centered experience of Irga and Barat, and in Yemen and Ukraine, the experience of mobile teams with Mohammed and Marco. We want to allow you and our speaker as well to discuss a bit more in depth about these two modalities that, as Isabel mentioned at the beginning, are one of the two main modalities that we use to apply the area-based site management framework and support the displaced population and more generally displacement affected communities through adapting site management activities to an area-based approach modality. So we are going to create two breakout rooms, and through these breakout rooms, we will have this more in-depth discussion using some of the questions you have submitted in the Menti, but you will also be able to, if you're willing, to unmute yourself and ask any question you might want directly to our speakers. So room 1 will be dedicated to community centers, and it will be Irga and Barat joining together with me facilitating. Room 2 will be focusing on mobile teams with Mohammed and Marco, and then also Isabel joining for moderation. So you will be able to join the room that you are most interested in. So I'll just now take some time to create the breakout room. So feel free to share the one that you prefer. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and create the breakout room. Oops. Isabel, do you want to maybe remind everyone about the Mentimeter if they are more comfortable in submitting questions using the Mentimeter?
Oh, so as we've mentioned before, we have Mentimeter up and open. There is in the chat, I'm going to reshare for the Menti. If you would like to access the Menti, please feel free to go to www.menti.com and use the code, which I'm putting back into the chat now, 1009535. If you would like to rejoin us, I'm sending it to the wrong place. Here we go.
Super, thanks a lot. So I am now opening the room. I just want to remind you, room 1, if you want to discuss more about community centers with me, Irga, and Barat, and room 2, if you want to discuss more about mobile teams with Isabel, Marco, and Mohammed. I'm opening the room now. Wait. Okay, I think they should be open. Yes, I see people joining. Perfect. I'll just give you a little bit more time to join and choose. Obviously, Irga and Barat will join me in room 1, and Mohammed and Marco will join Isabel in room 2. Barat, do you want to join room 1? I see Irga's joined already. Okay, perfect.
Sorry, Elena, how are we joining again? Sorry, I missed that.
You should have a pop-up on your screen. Otherwise, I can assign you. Which one do you want to join?
2, please.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, I am assigning to room 2. Voila.
Thank you, Elena.
Okay, for the other people, if you want to join us, you should have it on the screen. If you have any problem, just let me know. I am joining.
Sorry, Elena,
yeah.
I couldn't join to the room 2.
No problem. I'll join you now. I'll assign you to now. Voila. Okay, if anyone has any problem in assigning, in joining the room, I can assign them. Otherwise, I'll just do it now.
Can you please assign me as well?
You can assign
Which one?
me to room
1?
group.
Okay,
Yes.
doing it now. Okay, hi everyone. Sorry, it took me a bit because I was assigning everyone. So I can see we have some questions that have been shared in the Mentimeter. So maybe just to kick off the discussion, because we had to cut short your presentation, I'll just ask you, Barat and Irga, how you prefer, to maybe share some of the success stories that you have seen from the implementation of the community centers in Ethiopia. Jirga has already shared some, but maybe you want to share some more with us specifically, I think, on coordination and multi-stakeholder engagement. So we can, we can learn more about these positive outcomes of adopting this type of strategy in Tigray.
Thank you, Elena. Hi, all. Good afternoon again. Bharat from CCCM cluster in Ethiopia. I feel that I'm lucky in coordinating with the partners in Ethiopia. What I can say now is, in terms of coordination, we are able to make area-based approach as a like a showcase or a brand to everyone, because nowadays in our HRP, in our other priorities in terms of response, everyone is talking about area-based approach. That is the main thing that I would mention here. And in terms of practical coordination mechanism, that I would say, as an example, in Ndabagona, IOM is leading the area-based approach response. This is where the other clusters and other cluster, as well as the working group, for example, CAS working group and other clusters, are approaching to CCCM cluster how we can go beyond the community in centers. For them, community centers that looked like it is a center where the host community's complaint can be registered and then can be referred. It was mainly working. It was working as.
Supposed to be 5. No.
Sorry.
No.
Hello.
Let me see.
I go
Yes.
Dubai.
Okay. So the other clusters and other working groups are approaching to CCCM how we can go beyond the community information center model to incorporate all the affected population who cannot simply reach out themselves to the community centers, and then how often and how regularly we should be coordinating, and what is the architecture of the coordination that would be going. These are still under discussion in terms of coordination, but in operation we have a lot of different success stories. For example, in one of the locations managed by OSAD, I went there and communities were mentioning that they never had an experience of how the humanitarian could be approaching to host communities. They never had experience of having right information. That was one of the reasons that they could not support the host communities population who are IDPs staying in the host communities. And now the structure that they have maintained is the host communities and IDPs population leadership structure. This is where they talk about the communal facilities, how they can all access together. As an example, how the school learning centers that are centered in the IDP locations can be expanded in the host community, so that the government institutions can also be strengthened. But in the meantime, as a whole, the catchment area population gets the access to services. Similarly, in the health sector, we typically made one of the host community population who was affected by war. He was carrying a bullet in his backbone still, which was sad, but he was able to get basic health services through the area-based approach community information center, where the mobile health continued supporting regardless of their residence where they are as a whole population. A few examples, but Irga knows more how he is operating in some of the locations that are very interesting to see.
Thank you, Bharat.
Thank you, Irga. I started sharing my screen as we have organized a little bit the question we received through the audience. So maybe just linking with what Bharat was saying. I want to ask you a little bit here. Let me just organize my in the practical organization of your activities, since you talk so much about engagement of communities, can you tell us what are you doing to support people that might have problem in accessing the community center? How you ensure that they are also benefiting from the activities in the community center?
Basically, when we open community center, one of the criteria is access. Is it easily accessible for all type of community?
Yeah.
That's the main criteria. So we look for hotspot. Those majority IDPs living with host community are located. So we establish that that center. So in terms of accessibility, it's one of our criteria from the beginning. And the moment we feel there is distance barrier, we can come up a second community center to create access for those who are far. By the way, as a success center, success story, when we start with ABA, for example, in Maqala, we start with 6 ABA center, and 5 of them was centers we rented from individual people. But because the local government understands the benefit of ABA centers, now out of 11 ABA center, 11 of them are free from rental. The government provide us center to facilitate this kind of service. So this location is one of criteria for access. And if we feel there are a number of IDPs who are not able access to the center because of distance, we create another center to avoid that barrier.
Okay.
That's how we are dealing with it.
So maybe link to the example you just made and the success story you just told us about, and the fact that the authority really got the importance of this approach. But some participants are asking if authorities has ever raised any concern regarding CCCM working in out-of-camp settings, so out of the sites that you mentioned at the beginning were receiving most of the assistance. So have the authority raised any concern about this type of approach? And if so, how you managed to convince them also about the approach?
In my area, I think we are lucky enough. We don't see a challenge from the authorities in terms of operating from out of the camp. Rather, they are welcome because they know majority of IDPs are living in the host community without proper assistance. So when we approach them and we talk to them that we are expanding our CCCM service through ABA into IDPs in the host community, they were welcome. That's in terms of idea. Thanks to the cluster, the capacity building that we provide is involving local authority leaders for them to understand the importance. Now, even they are demanding more. They are now asking, we have this number of IDPs in this location, how we can incorporate them into the ABA area, ABA approach. That kind of cooperation and partnership is positively ongoing. Second, when we open the ABA service area, one of the concern is the service only limited for the IDPs or can be accessed by the host community. From the beginning, we were open. So whatever service we provide in the community center, host community can access them. Let's say, for example, in each IDP, in each area-based center, we have internet. And internet is one of the services that we are providing for IDPs in the host community to create them access to information, access to communication. And the young people around that area, as host community, they have a right to come and benefit from this kind of service. Even when the mobile health came, we don't restrict only for the IDPs in the host community. Those become in need of health service within that specific schedule, they have a right to do that. So this helps us to create a good relationship between the host community and the IDPs in the host community to strengthen their relationship. So the concern is very much positive and supportive concern from the authority side, not in a negative manner and not supportive approach.
Thank you so much.
But by the way, Elena, for your example, in one of the ABA in Aksum, there is a school activity for the children from IDPs in the host community. And most of them, because they don't provide, the family are not able to provide food to bring to the school, the government is providing us food items to bake and cook and provide
for the
to those who are not able to bring their own food to the school activity. So it's, there are a lot of good experience that we can share from the local authority perspective.
Thanks a lot. I don't know if any of our participants want to ask a question directly, either to Bharat or to Irga. Feel free. We are a bit more a smaller group right now, so feel free to do so. Otherwise, I can see a question here that was submitted through the Mentimeter about how you organize your team. ABA can be staff and time intensive to cover large areas and build trust through visits and to cover the whole area. So how are you organizing your team, your activities, and what innovation are there to streamline approach and bolster efficiencies?
So from our experience, the catchment area and its size matters. So for example, in one of the city that we are operating, Maqala city has 7 sub-cities. So our ABA centers are located in each sub-cities.
Okay.
So, but the sub-cities, they have their own structure again, the lower structure of the government. So the governance structure that represents the IDPs in the host community emanates from the small village located within the sub-city. So we make sure representation are from each lowest structure. This is one.
Yeah.
The second, I don't know, other ABA centers, they can share their own experience, but our organization, we are open 7 days a week. We are the service providers. We are emergency service providers. We are humanitarian service providers. So there is no Saturday or Sunday that we can close the center, and those who are in need of service during Saturday and Sunday, waiting till Monday, maybe they will face some challenge if it's health challenge. So our approach is opening 7 days a week. There are staff assigned there, including volunteers from the IDP host in the host community. So there is even a volunteer movement by the IDPs in the host community to make sure this center is at least serving 7 days a week. Let's say one of the service that we are providing is electricity bread making process, because firewood is one of the challenge faced by the host community and the IDPs in the host community. So we installed electrical stove. So if they want to cook on Saturday and our area-based center is closed on Saturday,
Of course.
are they going to die of hunger? No, it's not fair based on the principle we follow. So it's open Saturday and Sunday. So it's a combination of staff plus volunteer. So the volunteerism, sense of volunteerism by the host community and IDPs in the host community is very strong, that enable us to serve when the need is arise.
Thanks. Thank you. I don't know if... Oh,
Sadaf has his
please.
hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bharat, for spotting as I was taking note. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's a very, very good information at the right time. As Bharat rightly mentioned, like earlier, it's become like everybody's talking about it. So I want to hear from you if you can tell us, like, if a country operation is about to start AB approach, what are the key things that they should think about before they start this process? So how did you start? What was the main consideration? How do you selected some areas, some actors that you engaged? So that could be really helpful. And second, maybe Yerga, you just mentioned about even cooking is done in the community center. Like if you can give a little bit more example of what are the services provided through these centers, just to get a sense of it, because everywhere that I worked in, community centers have provided various kind of services. So that'd be quite helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I can answer the first one. So in the context of Ethiopia, within the zone, let's forget about the region, but within the zone also different oredas have different level of IDPs setting. As an example, in one of the oredas, you might find 2-3 keveles full of IDPs staying in the host communities, and rest of the locations, there will be none, or there will be very few. So considering that locations, of course, our limitations are quite a lot, that we cannot address every need at the same time. Therefore, we have to unfortunately prioritize living some of the communities in the same condition, and we try to meet the needs of the majority of the people as far as we can. So the caseload of the population in the host community is one of the key things that we do. And Ethiopia has various dynamics with different ethnic groups or the tribes that they stay around. Luckily, the locations that we have prioritized, they fall more or less under the same tribal or same community structure. Therefore, that is also one of the key things that we consider while making the community structures. As an example, in contested areas in Ethiopia, which used to be western zone or southern zone of Tigray, so we are considering that there are contested areas, considering the communities' structures and their tribes and the way that they want to align, we should also be thinking of while making the new expansion. And then obviously partners presence counts more importance, because we cannot do anything ourselves, because we are not the direct service provider, we are trying to be enabler. So our more of the thing is to sensitize the cluster coordinators, different level like inter-cluster coordination group, which is ICCZ, in different forums. We present them which are the locations we have identified, how the basic services will be starting, and what are the responsibilities that the other clusters should buy in, and work together with the CCCM operational team in those locations. And based on that, the other clusters also try to figure out their resources and align with their partners who has the capacity, who is operating in that location. Then they try to mobilize the resources. Based on that available resources, simultaneously the identified CCCM operational team engages the communities, and we host the big event with the communities together, that everyone is informed, at least basic minimal services that are available or that are going to be available, and the responsibility that every stakeholder, including the communities, will be taking over. For sure, based on the capacity of the partners, based on the capacity of the cluster itself, and the communities, as well as the caseload, services differ from one location to another location, in one catchment area to another catchment or area, even by the same implementing agency. As an example, Hadinet subcity is the locations where OSAD is managing in Mekele, and which in many cases differs from the Aksum managed area-based approach. And the Baguna that is managed by IOM differs from Adwa that they are managing. So one of the things that we are trying to do is harmonization of minimum activities, how we can keep the area-based approach alive and everyone can be buying in that approach. This is what we are working on, and now the effect, like slowly but it is positively coming up, and other clusters are also approaching to CCCM cluster and CCCM operational team, how we can be part of it, going beyond community information center or resource center out to those people. And the area-based approach does not seem to be only as a, and some of the understanding that the community information centers that the communities perceive is it is an information desk for complaint feedback mechanism in the host communities, which the narration is prevalent to other clusters also, and we are trying to make it more clear understanding that it is just a linkage. This is the point that multi-sectoral response enters, and there are a lot of things to do beyond it. So we had a meeting yesterday with the CAS consortium, and they have agreed that they will report to CCCM implementing agency and the CAS working group, including other cluster coordinators, so that we will be reaching out the people who are in the need and avoid the CAS distribution, which is most complicated in terms of managing the humanitarian response. For operation, I would pass to Irga for answering.
Thank you, Bharat. The services that we are providing basically divided into two parts. One is a service that we provide, and the other one is a service that is provided by other partners who they join us in the center. The services there are soft component and hard component. Of course, let's say the center is a capacity building center for the the governance structure, community gathering. So any community event by the IDP in the host community, they are doing their activities in the center. And in addition to that, awareness program, it could be PSAE, GBV, life skill training, and so on, are organized on the center. But like, there are hard components like wash program. Let's say we have laundry. In majority of ABA center, there is laundry. So IDPs in the host community, they can come and wash their clothes, dry their clothes, and collect and back to their home. This is the service that we are providing, which is very appreciated. Even cooking stove, particularly for baking bread, is very important. As I told you, it's open for the host community and IDPs for the host community, but this is one of the services that we are providing. But as I told you, there are other partners like UNHCR Protection, IHS, IAM Health, Mobile Health. Imagine one day, there are UNICEF partners, let's say Goal Ethiopia, a nutrition program implementer. They see the center as a service delivery center, and they are working. So the services are provided by our own side, which are managed by our own side. But because of the partners are in a good understanding now, in a better understanding now compared to 1 year or 2 years ago, they see our center as a service point delivery center, and they are coming and deliver their own activities.
Thanks a lot, Irga. I'm afraid we're running out of time. We have to go back into the plenary just to wrap it up. But it was a super discussion, and thanks a lot. So I'll close the room now, and then we can do a quick debrief in plenary.
Have access, you have a numerous number of partners out of these same sites. So I was just wondering on how you are able collecting the data and you still remain relevant, because I'm assuming if WASH partners go to the location, they'll get the same data as you. Any other partner will still get the same, data as you in the same site and all that. So doesn't that make it look like CCM is actually less irrelevant because they have access to the same data in the same site? Or it's actually, CCM makes it easier for everyone to get this data compiled and everything.
Just to, try to summarize. Sorry, Elena, we were finalizing a discussion. Just to quickly answer to Irene. It's relevant in terms of advocacy, because at local level, again, speaking about localization, so at local level, so these data are available everywhere, but then we are the ones who are not only showing the data, but also advocating for the gaps to be covered, right? So no one else actually, given the big scope of work and big geographic, scattered context. So we are the ones that use this data that are available for everyone, but to go and say, look, there is still this pending issue, still this site is in a big need, and either it will be closed or needs some other clusters to intervene, etc. So actually, it is still it's an adapted kind of activity compared to the one by default, but it's something that really give us the power to say we have this data at single site or single location level, so we take it further. So I guess that's the angle in that case. Over.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you.
Great, Marco. In the meantime, you are back in plenary, and I can see the discussion was very interesting in your breakout room as well. And I'm really, really sorry we had to cut it short because of time constraints, and it was the same with the breakout room number 1 on community resource centers. Isabel, do you want to start doing a brief recap of what you discussed in the mobile team breakout room?
I'll try and be very quick. I'm aware we've only got 4 minutes left in the meeting. So the main questions that came up were quite a lot on what it looks like now in the current funding scenario. One question was around how do we manage this it's quite time intensive, there's lots of resources in order to get to different locations with mobile teams. How do we manage in this environment? And we looked at the need to be creative, trying to look at fewer visits with more activities, maybe making those visits multi-sectorial, and trying to make sure that the information we provide works well, and also looking at using community governance structures and focal points in those areas to provide that information and as a resource that can then provide information back to the communities. So switching away from maybe as many visits and working closer with the communities on the ground. The other question that was asked quite a lot was around what we're looking at for the future and whether it's possible. Looking at whether it's still relevant or, what within the architecture, where ABA fits in the broader sense of coordination. And we had from Ukraine looking at how, Ukraine is still a large area, even when it's broken down into subnational groups. So the area-based response helps to bring some of that more together. And also from global level of how lots falls under the title of area-based approaches. CCCM's technical and heavy experience in area-based approaches and how much more we can bring that to the table. Whether or not we're able to influence, I think, is never an easy question at this point in time, but often when they're discussed, we're looking at area-based coordination without the understanding of an area-based approach and how we can bring that nuance in through CCCM and site management. I hope I've summarized those correctly because there was a lot of nuance within those to capture, and trying to, again, keep it short. Questions around data collection and how we share it back to IDPs. From Ukraine, a lot of the data sharing back and outwards is done through the cluster, through community center monitoring. But there's also information available for new arrivals on locations and space availability. So it does go to some extent in both directions and is used to provide that information back to newly displaced IDPs. We looked at defining catchment areas, and of course this is a context specific, but is often around matching local structures and access, as well as many other things. It was a very rich discussion, and I want to say a huge thank you to everyone for taking part. I'm going to stop there because we're running out of time.
Thanks a lot, Isabel. So from our side, we started discussing on the setup of the center and how we can make it accessible to everyone. Hirga specifically mentioned how accessibility is a criteria at the setup stage of the community center, and how also the buy-in of the local authorities enable to scale up the response to set up more center and thus to make it more easily accessible for people living in the target areas, as it was acknowledged that when it comes to organizing your activities and your team, the size of the catchment area matters a lot to ensure that there is good coverage and a good reach of the host community and displaced community. We also share a success story from Tigray on how good was the buy-in from the local authorities, as from the beginning this was presented as a way to support all the displacement affected population, including the host communities. And we also deep dive into the activities that are provided through the center. Bharat explain us how from his level, from the cluster level, is helping in coordinating with other cluster and ensuring that the relevance of the approach is well passed and that there is that multi-sectorial coordination at cluster level, while Irga shared with us a bit more of example of activities that are conducted in the centers that OSAD runs in Tigray, and these centers are open 7 days a week, and this was highlighted as very important to build relationship with the community as well, to be reliable, and as also some of the services that are provided, like the laundry service, like the cooking stove, needs to be accessible 7 days a week. I don't know if you managed to get through all your questions. We didn't from our side, and I apologize for the people who submitted. Maybe what we can do is that we can gather our notes in a file and then get the support from our speaker to provide a brief answer in writing to the question that were not answered, and then we will circulate with all the participants and those who subscribe to our working group newsletter. And on this end, I am going to share back my screen so we can close up the session. Thanks a lot. I know we are running out of time, so I really don't want to take more of your working day. Just a reminder that we have released the area-based site management training, the one that Bharat mentioned that was also rolled out in Ethiopia. If you are a CCM trainer, you can access it. You can write to me and Isabel, and we can give you access to the training package. So check our webpage to know how to access it, or you can just write to us. And some more resources from our side. This is the matrix I mentioned to you at the beginning. You can find it on our webpage. And on our webpage, on the CCM cluster website, you can also subscribe to stay updated on the work of the working group. As I said, we hope to circulate with you these brief documents with the written answer to the question that were asked, including those we didn't have time to answer during the breakout room. Once we have it, we will also publish on our website, on our webpage, on the CCM cluster website. So check it to stay updated. Well, final word, just to thank our speakers, so Irga, Bharat, Marco, and Mohammed. Really, thanks a lot for your time. And thanks a lot to Isabel to co-host this with me. These are our email addresses if you want to get in touch with the ABA working group coordinators. And we really, really thank you for your participation.
Grazie.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank
Really
you so much.
appreciate your engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Irga. Thanks, Bharat. Thanks, Marco. Thanks,
Thank you.
Mohammed.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the
Thank you so much, colleagues.
issues. Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.